shade tree is gone.
I'm Chad.
And I'm Tiffany, and this is Empathy Jam.
My shade tree is gone.
Jared just returned home from a 2-year National House concert tour, living full-time in an RV with his family through the pandemic. We got in this conversation about his grandpa and the impact he had on his life, and it led beautifully into his new song called Shade Tree, which he performs live on the Empathy Jam podcast. You got to hear it. He's the first live performance on Empathy Jam, so we got to celebrate that. Here we go. All right, man. So we got Jared Mahone here today. So grateful for you showing up. We already got started chit-chatting. You were telling me about your wife.
Yeah.
Your couple kids being born. That you were, for a second, you were like, my wife's not like the normal just stay at home mom 24/7. She
she's
functions at a high level.
Yeah, she's pretty high capacity. Yeah, and very kind of motivated as a career woman, and which I've always seen as a inspiration to me.
Yeah,
I mean, she just is she's pretty great. So we've always been partners, and that was kind of a big thing when we.
And you were married for 8 years before.
Before kids, yeah. We've been married for a while.
So you guys know what it's like to be empty nesters.
Totally, yeah.
Before.
We got married really young, so even when we got married, we were like, I didn't think we were gonna get married for like 6 or 7 years. When I met her, I was like, hey, we were just friends, and I was like, hey, I think I want to marry you. And she's like, maybe we should date first before we get married. I was like, yeah, cool, that sounds good. So I was thinking, we'll be dating for 5, 6, 7 years. We were both in college, like get out, we'll get careers and, kind of get stuff started. I was doing the music thing, and I thought maybe get some traction and then we'll be able to like afford a wedding and do all this stuff. And she was like, at some point, a year and a half into dating, she was like, oh, I don't care about a wedding. I was like, what? I was like, me neither. I was like, well, you want to elope? She was like, yeah. So then
this is just in one conversation.
We were sitting in the studio, and I was like, it was just like a big revelation because I was thinking, start make money and save up for this wedding I wanted to have, or throw her
for her experience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thinking that's what a thing that she wanted or that women wanted or whatever it was, and she was like, no, I just want to be, I don't want a wedding. I just want to be married to you. And I was like, yeah, that's what I want.
Song right there.
Yeah,
that's
right. No. And so it was over. And actually, what we did was we did a surprise wedding. So we wanted to elope, but we didn't want to leave our family out of it. My grandfather had just died, and she was like, I want your grandmother to be there, and her parents are split. So I was like, I want your dad to have that experience of walking you down the aisle and all that. So we made a fake email account if we were a promoter, and emailed the band that I was in at that time, emailed the guy, like the head, the front man of that band, and promised him all this money to come play the show. And then so that band, the show was in West Virginia, which is where her family is. And the band went there. We invited all her family and my family and like to the show, just like a random indie band show, and everybody showed up. And we were just like, whoever shows up to the show is who's going to be at the wedding. So they showed up to the show, but it wasn't a show. The band didn't know nothing. Like we packed the van and a whole bit, and showed up and we were like, all right, we're here for a wedding instead. They were like, what? And I proposed, which she knew it was coming, and then the pastor of the church that I go to, we've been doing like secret marriage counseling for 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
And he like snuck and met us down there and like popped up out of nowhere. It was like, we're doing it now. And everybody's like, what?
That's awesome.
It was really,
awesome.
it was really special. Yeah.
So actually that was pretty much better than
that's what we thought
traditional.
Too. Yeah. We thought that, I mean, it was like an, eloping, but having.
So were you guys like dressed up or?
No, flip-flops, and I was in a hat and.
Yeah.
We got married really young, so we were like, oh, let's just hang out. We're not, thinking about kids. We're not thinking about a family. I'm just hanging out with this girl that I know in college who's the best human being that I've ever met. And so, yeah, like I said, we weren't thinking about a family. We were just kind of living and working, and I was doing music and she was doing a career. And then our son showed up 8 years later. And, and that was pretty amazing. And then our daughter showed up 4 years after that. And now here we are. We got a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old. Yeah. And so when COVID hit, we took a pretty hard turn. I'm guessing everybody that's a musician or an entertainer of any kind had to pivot pretty hard when all of a sudden, freaking shows dried up.
Yeah. So
our pivot hard was to sell our house and move into an RV, and we drove and toured the country as a family, which I had never done before. I was touring.
Okay, wait. Let's get into how did this decision.
Yeah.
That's not exactly like, well, let's elope. You want to sell, or maybe it was.
Yeah, it felt like.
Whose idea was it?
Well, I had been kind of talking Kara into the idea of touring together because, I toured. Like I said, I was touring for 15 years, and when we started having kids, I was like, it got harder and harder to leave. Yeah. And especially when Murphy showed up, like I felt like I was leaving her with 2.
Right.
And before it was like leaving her with 1, and you know, it didn't feel that hard.
Yeah.
And then it's probably a little something changed in me too. Like when we had our second kid, it was like, oh, I'm like a father, I'm a
You're
dad.
all the way.
Yeah, I'm like a dad of a family.
Yeah.
Like before when we had Cam, it was like, oh, I'm still hanging with this girl that I met in college, and we have this little tiny roommate, and we're teaching him how to be a human and stuff like that. But then when Murphy showed up, it was like, oh, this is like husband and wife, 2 kids, and a responsibility in life and stuff like that. Not that I didn't see that before, but it was hard to put all that. It just
settled in a little.
Yeah,
more.
I grew up with a sister. I was older brother, younger sister, and mom and dad. So it was like the 4 of us. And then all of a sudden when my daughter was born, I was like, oh, that's what that was life that I, mom and dad and 2 kids. Very fortunate to have that situation, I realize. And so, I wanted to do better, I guess, as a dad.
Yeah.
Not just being the dude that was leaving all the time.
Yeah.
So
I'll just take it like a guess here. Was it just like it kind of calibrated you in a way where you like wanted to have more plans and more predictability?
Yeah. And my wife is kind of that way. She's really good at it, making plans and kind of forecasting the future. I'm pretty whatever. I'm pretty spontaneous, and that's like a good way of saying I don't plan very well.
Right.
But she says, all right, this is the life that I want, and then she figures out what to do to get that life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is what I want to do with my time and my day. And then whatever the result of that effort is, that's the lifestyle that I get. That's the lifestyle that it affords.
Yeah.
So we come at it from 2 very opposite ends. So she has kind of taught me a little bit about like how to, plan or say what you want out of life, not just like, because she's great at being able to be like, all right, this is my life and this is my work. Like I'm not that way. I'm my life and work and it's all the same thing. Yeah. Which I realize, and she's kind of reminded me a lot. Like I feel pretty fortunate to have gotten to do what I want to do every single day of my life for my whole career. Like I had one job, and then all of a sudden I was able to do music. So I quit that job, and then haven't had to get another job since then. So we'll see how long it lasts.
Yeah, I feel you, dude. I'm right there with you. Just trying to live present and learn that skill out of necessity of how to see in the future. It sounds like she can like reverse engineer stuff.
Totally.
Kind of. I'm really aiming towards that here lately.
Yeah.
Mostly I'm aiming towards just like consistency, and just because you got to make it about the doing.
Yeah.
Because if you look too far,
right,
it just crumbles you,
Yeah.
and it just can take over in its own way. So of course, like typical balance, presence, all the stuff we know, but it doesn't really matter if you know it. You got to like practice and
Yeah,
remind
totally.
yourself of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what got us into, I mean, that's what kind of got us to the RV. You were saying whose idea it was. It really was her idea. Like I was kind of trying to talk about this idea of trying to tour with the family, when the kids got old enough, and she was like, we're kind of almost there with Cam, and then Murphy showed up, so she's like too young to go out on the road, and I was like, can we do this? Is this possible? And she's like, I'm gonna get back to work, or all of those life details. And then it was like Murphy was 4, COVID hit, we were all home, like just quarantining like everybody was, and I was like, I'd done virtual shows for a year. I looked at my wife and I was like, I got to go back on the road. Like I got to go out there and I got to see if people are meeting. I got to see because what I had developed like the 4 or 5 years before that was an entire system of booking house concerts. So that had become like a really special part of my touring, and also a pretty significant chunk of my financial portfolio was doing these house concerts. And I was like, if venues are closed, I mean, and these virtual shows are dried up, like I want to see if this is a thing, if people are still meeting it. I was wondering if people still wanted to meet and do music and do house concert stuff, or if their homes had become like their one sanctuary. Mm-hmm. And I found kind of both, and where it was like, if they, because there was a feeling, at least in a lot of places that I was going, where people still felt really unsafe. Mm-hmm. And even when it first hit, like nobody knew what was going on, all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. So, but when I started putting the feelers out there, people were like, oh my gosh, yes, please. We've been trapped in this house. We would love to do something. We'll keep it safe. We'll do it outside, whatever it is.
Yeah.
COVID meant that nobody was meeting inside.
Yeah.
But people would meet outside. So the only way that I was figuring that concerts were going to happen, house concerts or other concerts in general, I was like, all this is going to be outside. Mm-hmm. Like you even see like stand-up comedians, they were doing shows and
people pulling their cars up,
yeah,
and stuff like that. Yeah.
So it was all outside. It was like, let's get out in the open air, which that's like the opposite of what makes a house concert good. Like house concerts are good inside a house.
Yeah. Everybody's sitting down.
Yeah, and it's like the intimacy and it's like this. It's almost like a human psychology trick of like, well, you get 30 people in the living room and it feels like a sold out show. Mm-hmm. Like you put those same 30 people in like a 250 cap. It's like empty. Nobody showed up.
Yeah.
It's the same amount of people.
Right.
So the house concert thing, 30, 40, 50 people in a living room or a den or a space inside the house, all of a sudden it's got that energy, that whatever that intangible thing that happens when you get people gathered in a space, that's the magic inherent in a house concert. And it just doesn't take very many people to do it.
Yeah. Well, one thing that makes me think about is that, you kind of made that point of comparing the two sizes and just of audience. And then when you put it in that house concert setting is like, it's 30 people, but when you have that energetic and of a connection with 30 people, I mean, let's not forget that when people have an experience, it just butterflies out. They share it not only like verbally, but it really does something. It's like you have you have a stronger dose.
Totally.
You just have a stronger dose of whatever the magic is.
That's a good way to see it.
Yeah. I've done just a couple. I've not done like your level. Like I'll be writing on your posts like, I'm jelly, man. I'm jelly, And I know that there's a whole nother side of the hard parts of it and the grind of it.
Yeah.
But man, it's just cool that you are that a risk taker like that, and it kind of is like an artist creative thing a lot of times. It's just like if it just feels so good to be in your groove of creating and pushing to the next thing, because as soon as you stop or go, wow, I did good. You're susceptible to that,
Totally.
whatever that is. And do you have that? Do you have do you have down moments?
Oh yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think it's good. I mean, I think it's good to have those moments because it kind of shocks you back into. It shocks you back maybe out of your ego.
Yeah, it's almost like you gotta make a choice. You are just there. It's like you're either gonna choose this like hopeful, or you're just gonna bask in the whatever you want to call that. The
Yeah.
not enoughness. The what am I gonna do now? And
Yeah,
oh
the
my
imposter syndrome,
Yeah,
all of that stuff.
all that stuff. And I'm so curious on those waves of like what brings you out of the down moments, or because like at times we think a down is a bad thing,
Yeah.
and we also think an up is a good thing.
Right.
And like so many times in our life, it's like both of those. You can think this great thing happened, and it can turn into be like a real pain in the butt
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And then here a horrible thing can seemingly happen, and that can turn into like some of the greatest growth.
Totally.
Some of the like you can look back, you hear that thing, we can always look back and connect the dots and be like, I'm so glad that happened.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, I mean, painful stuff is motivating.
Right.
It's the most motivating thing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I wish it wasn't, but in my life,
Yeah.
it seems to be the discomfort is where you get reward, or whatever that is. What do you think about any of
Yeah. I agree, but it still doesn't make the rationalization of that doesn't make those hard times easy.
that? Right.
Because
We can make sense of it, but
yeah,
yeah.
like you're saying, you look back at your life, you're like, if this hadn't happened, this and that, that's nice to have the history of the thing. But when you're in the thing, like you don't know if there's a moment when you're going to be looking back at that thing,
Right.
going, wow, wasn't that great that happened?
Yeah.
It's like, nah, this is not fun.
Yeah.
This experience is not fun. I mean, I feel grateful for the ups and the downs, and there's some times I feel guilty about it though too. Like you have this down moment. I mean, you said it even in this interview, and it happens to me so many times. People know you're a songwriter, and they're like, "There's a song."
Mm-hmm.
It's like freaking that. I mean, why? Why do I have to write? I got to write about every single thing, and so I people do that to me a lot, and it's like I feel guilty when I don't write a song about something that was big and important. Like, I mean, I know I love my wife. I don't have a whole catalog of songs about her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't know if she doesn't seem to be affected or upset about that. Like she doesn't care to be the muse or the
Yeah.
the character in the songs that I write. But I carry a little bit of guilt with that.
Yeah.
Like it's like, if I feel this way, shouldn't this be, an outpouring or even like, something tragic happens.
Yeah.
And it's a big moment and it's a big emotional moment. And it's like, oh, I didn't write anything about that. Or I didn't I didn't create anything about that. It's like, I have this guilt that I didn't, or that maybe I think people are expecting it, or people are like, or whatever, like like I was saying, like you have the conversation, people are like, oh, there's a song. It's like, well, okay.
Right. It doesn't quite work like that.
No.
It doesn't seem to. It's a bit of a, I chalk it up. Somebody said this to me recently, asked a question. I thought it was a good question. And he's just like, well, I think it's a mystery. And there is a part of being creative because I think you would agree with this. Like there's times like you write or you do something and it's like, it's kind of hard to take credit for it because it feels like God or the songwriting gods or spiritual, whatever people believe in,
Right.
like something, it was like given to you. And they
Yeah.
talk about the universal creative and you just happen to tap into it. Or it's kind of like, I think I heard interview John Mayer talking about like lucid dreaming. It's a little like that, like you got to capture it where it's just like can be given to you. And
Yeah.
usually it's about 2/3, and then you got to use your strategic brain
Yeah.
to grind it out and finish it.
Right.
And that's kind of what I was hearing from you of like, oh, am I supposed to write this song? And it's like, it's confusing being an artist because at times it's so like unexplainable. You don't know how it's happening.
Totally.
It's a complete mystery.
Totally.
And then you do use your strategy at times to like, how could I make this connect to people just a little more?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a little combination of the
Yeah.
two. But then, you know, if you get totally in the strategy mode and then you make yourself like a failure for no reason and be like, why haven't I, like, that's a, some kind of self-regulation there with the ego and
Totally.
acceptance.
Yeah,
Like,
I think
like that's the kind of stuff that I feel like we're all thinking and doing,
yeah.
but like how many of us are sharing it with each other and taking some of the like weight off and be like, oh man, like I thought I was the only weird one like obsessing about like
Yeah.
goofy stuff like that or whatever it is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I know you've had to be strategic with certain songs though too, right? You've had to write songs for couples and
Yeah.
stuff like that before.
Yeah, so that was kind of a new concept for me, but even in that exercise, and I'll talk about it, but even in that exercise, I try to put as much of myself into the equation as I can, because otherwise I can't, it doesn't come off very genuine.
Right, yeah.
So what started happening to me probably 7 or 8 years ago now is that I started getting people asking me to write songs for them, like special occasions and weddings and stuff like that, which I was like, no, I don't do that. Like I don't craft write. I don't write on prompts. Like I took some meeting when I first started doing this, like it was probably 08. Yeah, it's probably, I started in 04. So by about 08, I had made enough connections and I was going to Nashville and thinking I wanted to be like a songwriter. And then I was like in these meetings with labels and A&R people, and like they set me up on these co-writes and stuff like that, and meeting in these buildings, in these rooms with no windows, and hanging out with these people that you never met before and doing all this. And I was like, this can't be how it works. I mean, it obviously is. It's exactly how it works. But I was like, this cannot be how great songs come out. Like, I don't believe that. I don't believe that you just sit in a room with people who are good at writing and then you look up a bunch of stuff in a rhyming dictionary and then that makes a hit. Like, I believe it makes a song, but I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that is exactly how hits are made, and that's why I don't have any. But I ran as fast as I could from that situation.
That just feels like a complete, like all 100% on strategy.
Yeah.
And like figuring out this.
Yeah. But that's what commercial music is. It's not music. It is a product version of music. I mean, it literally is people who are good at a certain craft getting together and creating a thing that's sellable, a thing that is commercial, a thing that meets this demographic, a thing that connects with this, prototype of a human.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's all the things that good companies do.
They're stacking together data and be like, okay, when we talk about this type of thing.
Yeah. and those are things that actually happen. And the more rare thing and the more exciting thing, and the thing that I think becomes lasting art, even in commercial art, is when you just, when they let the artist do what they do, and they write and they submit and they come up with, but even those artists I'm sure they're kind of directing their own brain. And that's what I realized kind of in myself especially when I was writing those love songs for people. I realized at some point I was like, oh, if I get a deal and I'm working for a record label, some executive is going to tell me, hey, you might want to massage this, you might want to tweak this so it can be a little more broad, a little more, hit the spectrum, hit this demographic. either someone else is going to impose that upon me, or I can impose that a little bit on myself with the least amount of compromise to my own, expression and art as I possibly can, so that I don't feel like, one, somebody's controlling me or I'm under somebody's thumb, and two, that I'm not making more compromises than I'm willing to make. So I did kind of like say, okay, well, why can't I try craft writing a little bit? Why do I have to just sit and wait for all the inspiration every single time? What would it look like if I just took somebody else's story and, wrote a song? Mm-hmm. So that's what I started doing. I had people just write a whole page of information about their life and how they met and who they are and their story and their inside jokes and stuff like that. And then I'm like, all right, I think I can do this, and just started doing it.
So you insert yourself in there.
Totally.
Not to drop the empathetic part in there, but you get in there and you're like, how can I meet myself where these people are?
Well, I mean, you become a character writer of somebody else's life and situation, but at the same time, like, it's still my pen in my own hand, and my own heart,
absolutely,
stick myself out there. So, and I want it to be as authentic, for them. Yeah. I just don't want to just rattle off a bunch of facts about their life.
And I'm just guessing here, and put myself in here, like, not only do you want it to meet those needs of their story and to make it super special for them, it's just like, as a songwriter and a creative, you're like, I want this to be just a standalone good song.
Correct.
Because you can, for one, keep performing it, which I've seen you do. And it's just, I don't know, what is that about us that we want to push ourselves to the 2-hour limit? And just like, how good can this be?
Totally.
Because we could totally mail in a song with people's information.
Correct.
Come up with good melody, and somebody is, not that musical. You could pivot off of there. It's just special to them.
That's correct.
They pay you whatever you agreed to, and that's cool, and you could collect it. But there's just that. I think this is kind of what you were alluding to with being just like in a room, people looking up on different words, and just very strategic songwriting, that you still hold that magical part as like so important to you.
Totally. Well, and there's the other part of it too, is it's a part of everything that I make is a part of my brand. It's part of my name. Like, if I'm doing co-writes in Nashville, whatever, it's like, you do like 5-6 songs a day. You just sit there and like, who cares? Like, there's such a dissociation with what you're making because you're making it for somebody else. This is what I think about. Being signed to a label, not that I know, because I have never been, but the only thing that I could think of was like, there was this old episode of this ancient show. Now it's called Wonder Years, and Kevin, the little kid in the show, works for this hardware store, and this is what I picture in my head all the time. And it's just his dad's like a friend or whatever. I can't remember. Maybe his uncle. I can't remember what it was. Mm-hmm. But he hated it. He wanted to work at the mall with all his friends and, stupid hat, whatever. But his dad was like, work at this, and he hated being there because it was not what he. It wasn't cool. It wasn't
shiny.
No, it wasn't shiny. Mm-hmm. Exactly. But he learned in the show. He learned all these valuable lessons from this guy. And what I picture myself in that situation, like, this is just this guy that opened up a hardware shop. There's also giant box hardware stores where you go and you could get hired there and wear their apron with their logo on it, and walk around and stock their shelves with the hammers that they want to sell, and be a liaison to their customers who they connect with through their giant mass marketing. Yeah. And that's the only way that I could think about it. It's like, that's what it's like being signed to a label, especially if you're an artist that has no leverage or clout to write yourself a good contract. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're just a nobody and you're just like, freaking sign me. Like, that's what I had a bunch of peers do. They're like, I want to get signed. And
dude, that story, I don't know if you know his story about Alan Stone. His manager took him for $400,000 or something.
Jeez,
and he had to pay it all off before we knew about him.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But yeah, that's
So that's what I was thinking of, like, okay, well, I could go work for somebody else, right? And that's what would be, working for a label. Or I could open my own hardware store. You know what I mean? I could open my own shop. I could interface with my own people that, were interested in what I was, the environment that I was creating, and that I could figure out what they wanted exactly and stock the shelves with, with the stuff that they were interested in. And that was just the path I took.
yeah.
And the creative pieces of that job, are who I want to be and how I want to set that space up. But also, the more people come into the environment, the more I can kind of get to know them and craft a little bit more that's kind of focused on them, and it can be about their story and not necessarily always my story.
Yeah.
And so that's been a kind of a fun learning experience as an independent artist.
Yeah. And how many years has that been?
17. It'll be 18.
So at first, when you were in college, you were writing and playing and singing, or you've been singing. I know you've been singing since high school and your whole life.
Yeah, I was singing since I was a kid. Like,
Yeah.
my family had a band, and I kind of grew up in a family where it was normal to sing, and it was normal to learn instruments and write
Yeah.
songs and stuff like that. So I was always writing songs. I didn't play an instrument until I got to college, and people had guitars, and I borrowed them and taught myself how to play. So yeah, it was like college is when I started writing songs on an instrument that I could perform them all by myself. Before, I was writing songs, and I would, like, get with my uncles, and I'd sing them to them, and they'd play them, and then I could kind of get a song out that way. But even so, like, I couldn't really perform it unless I had somebody else to play it. Or my one uncle is a great record producer, and he would just, like, create a track. Like, he'd, like, make a whole track. He could play all the instruments into the keyboard, and so he would make tracks for me, songs that I was writing, which is unbelievable advantage. But what am I going to do? Karaoke? You know what I mean? I, like, show up with a CD. It's like, play this, I'm going to sing a song. It's like, no.
Yeah.
So my other uncle was teaching himself how to play guitar, and I was like, if he can do it, I can do it. So I started borrowing guitars and taught myself. And so, yeah, college was, like, the first time when I was writing on an instrument that I could perform on, so I could, like, it's a very typical white guy story. Like,
Yeah.
college guy with an acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
But it led to me being able to create.
It's a little different though, because you had been singing for so long,
Yeah.
and being around, and you just knew. I imagine that there was a certain period where your guitar playing had to catch up with your voice, because I know
100%.
how you
It's
play.
still
You
doing
play
it.
kind of percussive, funky,
100%.
like, and I can only imagine you were like, okay, I know how to do this with my voice, and I know the way I want it to sound.
Yeah.
And you got to work it to get it there.
I still wouldn't say I'm not a guitar player. My right hand is pretty good. This hand is an idiot. So I play well enough to
You
write.
say that with all your chord progressions.
I mean,
I hear your arrangements.
I
They're not 1-4-5.
there's a lot of them are now, but I play well enough to write a song.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, I was exploring the instrument when I first got it, and because I didn't know any chords, so I was just making up chords. So then I was all finding these weird things that chords that were cool to me, I guess. But I didn't know what chords were. You know what I mean? I was just trying to find them.
Well, I haven't seen you play bad ever.
Okay. I can't play like you. I mean, I just I don't have it like
got
that.
it. It's just, you know how it is. It's more than, it's not even the skill. It's like what you choose to play and how you mix it in, and all these things that are kind of, I don't know, unspoken, or you learn over the years or whatever.
Right.
There's a story I never got a chance to tell you. I was getting my hair cut in Hilliard, somewhere.
Yeah.
This like years ago, and I did know who you were. I'd seen you. I know there's this like YouTube video of you starting this big festival or something, beatboxing.
Yeah, that was Columbus Arts Festival.
Okay.
I'm sure. It was a red
So
shirt.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I had known about you kinda for whatever reason. Like I knew who you were. I was getting my hair cut by this dude, and I can't remember his name. You'll know who he is.
I know.
And he's like, "Oh, you play music or whatever?" He's like, "Oh, I used to do a little singing or whatever." He's like, "You know Jared Mahone?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't personally know him, but yeah, I know who you're talking about." And this guy is a twin
Yeah.
of another guy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm like, cool. So that I'm pretty sure, like I looked more of your stuff up, just like, oh, that's cool, whatever. So some years passed. My son, we're into like dirt bike racing, supercross. So they got a race in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Me and his friend's dad, I don't know this guy. We all drive together in Indianapolis. Well, his friend's dad had another guy. And it's the other twin.
The twin of the guy.
I swear. And we're driving in the car, and he's like, "So what do you do?" And I'm like, and you know how that conversation goes. You kind of like, should I say the music thing? Because I don't even know if I want to get all into it. You know what I mean? You don't want to hear the, like, basically what I did to you. Like, you can make a song out of that.
Yeah, right.
You know, or whatever. Just like, it's hard to explain. Like, no, like,
Would I know anything?
Yeah, like, I'm a
No.
serious musician, you know, or whatever. Like, but I said it. He was like, "Yeah, man, like I used to do some singing." He's like, "You know, Jared, man." I was like, "Wait." I was like,
Didn't I have this conversation
"Yeah."
with you
And I
already?
put it together, and I was like, "Dude, I've met your brother."
That is so funny.
So through these two people, so random and
Yeah.
spaced out time, and they said you guys had like a little some kind of singing group.
So in high school,
And they had great things to say about you, by
that's
the way.
very
They were
nice.
like, we could harmonize, but Jared was always the one.
Nah.
Like, he was always the one.
those guys, those are my dudes. So it's Todd and JJ.
Yeah.
Were the twins. And then we had another, our other buddy's name is Gerald. And so the four of us were like this, you know, it was like Boys to Men era, those kind of singing groups. And we were like boy band, you know, wannabes.
Yeah.
But we were singing like a lot of throwback stuff, like doo-wop stuff, because like a four-piece barbershop kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And the guy who was our teacher in high school at West High went to school, was friends with my dad. They both went to West High and were in a quartet when they were in high school.
Yeah.
So he was like, "Hey, you guys could you could be this group," because we were all in the ensemble, the choir and ensemble at West High. He was like, "You guys could be this group." And it was cool because, you know, it was the twins, and I was, you know, tall, skinny dude, and Gerald's, you know, an unbelievable soul singer, and we had a look, or we had a thing, and so they were super serious about it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've been singing my whole life with my family. I didn't think about it being that serious, but it was fun.
Yeah. So that's just random connection, you know, until me and Jesse met Flick, that maybe brought me more in your, like, being around you more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can't remember, I don't remember how, was Flick there to see you guys?
No, that was just so random.
I think it was super random.
Well,
like,
yeah, he kind of was, but not really. I mean, he had just got off tour, and then his girlfriend, now wife, at the time had worked with Sam that was singing in that band, and Sam was probably just like, you know, that typical musician thing, like, I'm playing a gig tonight or whatever, and they must have became friends enough to where she got Flick to come.
I think that Sam hit me up and was like, "Come to the thing." Did she ask Flick to come?
I think this happened one time before the one time you came.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I was saying, I thought I said to Flick, I was like, I got to go see this band, because I was meeting up with Flick for something else. It's like, I got to go see this band. You want to meet me there? I thought that's how I can't remember exactly. I thought that's how it happened. But.
I don't know exactly how, but I know the night that we met Flick, you weren't there.
Oh, okay.
This is a separate time. Same place, though, actually.
Yeah, Park Street?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Flick had came up late at night, like at the inn, and just said to Jesse, like, "Yo, just, that's when he was doing like gigs with Rain. He's
Yeah.
just like, I just got off this tour and I want to play with you, or it's just something like that. It's just like,
Yeah.
you guys are not just like a cover band or whatever. And it was just like, it was one of those late night things where you're like, okay, whatever.
Totally right.
Whatever. And I think Jesse was like, yeah, hit me up on Facebook and now, of course, I had a conversation with Flick. I think he's going to get on here with me, by the way,
Nice.
too. So Flick is a mutual friend of ours. Amazing drummer.
Yeah.
Amazing drummer. Like, for real. Like, he just lays it down. But we'll get all into that. But he came out, and that's just kind of how we were playing in the Sam Axe band.
Yeah.
And that's how we kind of met him, and then ended up, him and Jesse hit it off, and getting him some gigs. He got me a couple random gigs. Yeah. So that one gig, I only had 4 days to prepare for. It freaked me out. Like, it's like I had to call him and cry on the phone, but you got to act like you're totally tough and prepared, And I'm just like, dude, I can't do. He's like, you can do it. You're freaking out, or whatever,
That's
so,
funny.
Anyway, I hope to get him on here too.
Yeah, he'd be good. He's got a crazy
a story,
yeah,
man.
He's got a crazy story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, you've been doing this RV thing.
Yeah.
And you did it for 2 years straight.
Yeah. Yeah, we just kind of set out.
And can you give us, I don't know if you're willing to talk, can you give us the highs and some lows and unpredicted things that you and your wife are figuring out, like, oh, we didn't see this one coming?
Totally. I think I was kind of talking about it. I have a hard time staying on track, but I was kind of saying the reason why we decided to do the RV thing is because I realized the shows are going to be outside. So we had to go where the weather was nice. So that was it. Like, we were going to places during the time of the year where the weather was nice because we thought the shows would be outside. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened. So we got the rig, we sold our house, and we just decided we were like, let's just go full time. Because that's the hard thing about, especially going West Coast. Like, I've done a good handful of West Coast tours. It just takes a while to get out there and get back, especially if you're doing shows along the way. So I was like, I got it. I hadn't done a West Coast run in like 4 years. Basically since Murphy was born. I did that's not true. I did a run when she was like 4 months. I did like a 90-day run. And so I came back and she was 7 months old and she was a different person.
You were gone for 90 days?
Yeah. It was rough. Like, I'd done that before, but not with 2 kids. And it was like, broke my heart. Like, I just came back and I see these photos of Murph and I'm like, I don't know that baby. Like, I don't remember that baby. Like, there's just a good chunk of her life. Cause you change that baby changes so much in those years. Anyway. So yeah, we got the RV, we sold the house, and we took off, and it was really magical. It's hard for me because I PR my way into like painting everything into a good situation, but it really was really great. On the lows were like learning the RV. Like, I didn't realize that I would. Like, it just sucks a lot of your time. Like, I thought I would be able to create more. I thought I would be able to work more. But, like, doing family life and then also, like, taking care of this giant beast of a thing that I'd never been in an RV before. Or I had been in one once before, but I had never, like, been responsible for.
Right.
How the thing works.
Yeah.
So just kind of like learning that machine was a whole other element. Like, one of the great things about the way that I toured before is I always had my stuff together. Like, this car that I had, even before that we had a couple buses, And those were a little bit stressful. But once I got in the car, it was like, this car is never going to die. It is the most trustworthy thing. Like, it's things you don't think about like that are such a big element of touring. Like your systems and your equipment and like things like that it's like, it takes that stuff out of your periphery so that you can be the performer you need to be, or be the artist that you need to be. So once that stuff like starts creeping back up, like there's no space. It's harder to get that space to be like,
it's like you only have 100% of energy.
That's right. That's 100% true.
You don't have 110. You have 100. So when that starts to take up more, it just
yeah, a lot of stuff suffers, and that's experiences that I think everybody has. So I mean, that was a big kind of shock reality of touring with an RV. The other piece is touring with a family, which again I'd never done before. When I'm touring by myself, it's hard to explain, but I'm sure people can relate. But you get into this mode that's pretty self-involved, but in the way that that's a good thing. Like, you just get in your own head and you get into this rhythm or space that helps you become the performer that you kind of need to be for what it means to be a musician on the road. You get into your own rhythm, you get into a vibe, you get into this headspace. It becomes a creative adventure. It becomes that creativity kind of spills out on the stage, and people kind of feel that. I mean, it's hard to explain again, and it's really hard to explain to my wife,
because we're not talking about like creativity with the music and all. I mean, of course that's like it's like your I don't want to call it product, but it's your main thing that people think it is. But you better be good at that. That better be good, of course. But it's all this other. You're having to take that creativity and you're living life creatively.
Yeah,
you're
correct.
Solving problems. You're learning about the RV.
Right.
And you're creatively trying to fulfill the needs probably with the kids and your wife, and you guys are figuring out the dynamic. There's so much going on. I can only guess.
Yeah. So it's hard to like get into that kind of headspace when I'm dealing with the RV, when I'm dealing with the family. Like, it's like dad hat and husband hat and, family hat is not the same as performer hat or writer hat, or, you know what I mean? Like, they're very different worlds. Mm-hmm. Like, this is like weird, not the right stress. This is like still stressful or still whatever, but it's like the right kind of energy stress. I don't know how to explain it. It's like, I can't do this thing that takes a half hour unless there's like 4 hours before it where I'm doing something that is leading to that. Like, and I don't know what to call this 4 hours, but it's definitely not like changing diapers and, taking the trash out or whatever the domestic stuff is. Like, even if this 4 hours is like, this is not a good thing to say, but even if that 4 hours is like seeing a movie or like being on my skateboard, which I don't do a lot now, but whatever those things are, like just being in the studio or like I can't work on this moment would never happen in this song if I hadn't been working on this mix for this 4 hours before. Mm-hmm. And having that time is like hard time to justify because it doesn't look like anything. Mm-hmm. Like there's this great book that a great friend of mine recommended to me. Her name is Jessica Baldwin. And she was a musician here actually in town, and I can't remember the name of the book right now, which would be great. But it's this great book where there's just like these excerpts of the author basically did all this historic research of these creative people or important people or historically significant people. A lot of them were creatives and writers and musicians and things like that. But they were these really small, easy to read excerpts where the historian basically looked and took all these things in their life to boil down what kind of creative person they were. Mm. And it was like, this person, took a cold bath every morning and, they did this. And according to their mistress's papers, they had a, cigar with the whatever, you know what I mean? So it like laid out this whole person's day
Yeah.
that they were able to piece together, or their patterns, their creative patterns. It's a really interesting book to read because it's like Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, founding fathers kind of stuff, and it's like Monet, artists of every kind. And I could not believe how many writers specifically, every one of them had some point in their day where they took like a 3 or 4 hour walk. Like that was trippy to me. I was like, and that was like an important part of the day is like you go and you just walk for 3 hours. And that, like, as a dad and as a family guy, when in the world do you have 3 hours of your day to just like walk?
Babe, this is when I do my 3 hour walk without you.
That's what I'm saying.
So this 3 hour walk thing is one thing that stood out to you. And I like that you're kind of saying that because I was wanting to ask you, like, do you have patterns and things that mean a lot to you that either get you back going in the direction you want to go, or any routine or repetition?
I mean, not as much now.
Not a 3 hour walk.
Not a 3 hour walk. I mean, my 3 hour walks became just being in my studio, like just being in that space, even if I wasn't like in there doing like a task, just being in that space.
Yeah. Has some sort of intention.
It's got something. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Even if it's not like, I'm going to go in here and do this, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. It's like, I just need to go there. I just need to be in the space.
Yeah.
And once I'm there, I'm like, oh, I don't have a plan yet, but I'm going to mess with this guitar pedal that I haven't, messed with, or I'm going to rearrange the room, or I'm going to freaking hang some stars.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like whatever it is, just to be in the space. But then it's hard because those 3 hours, and all of a sudden, you start getting calls. They're like, all right, we got to this, or we got to that. It's like, it's hard. It's
very hard, man. You start to feel, at least for me, I start to feel guilty, or I'm kind of hot and cold with it too. Like what you were saying earlier, like when you're in it and you get real deep, it's like, my wife calls it like the manic side of me or something, where it's just like, I'm just like so into it. And I almost get a little edgy too, even though I'm enjoying it.
Right.
But I'm a little like, it's like, I got to get this thing or whatever. So I guess that's kind of what I mean by like, man, there's creativity everywhere to keep yourself sane and to like figure this thing out, that there's definitely not any type of rule book. You only kind of pick up from other people that you either look up to, or like you said in this book, like it's like, holy crap, a 3 hour walk, interesting. But you've had those moments, like what you said, it's kind of unexplainable, to where you don't know how, you can make some connections with your human brain, like, well, this kind of led to this, that then inspired this mystery spiritual gift or whatever. I don't even know.
It's almost like trying to get on a frequency. Like, like it takes a second to get on that frequency, but then once you're there, you can be really efficient creatively. And that's what I'm trying to say about what the downs were with being in the RV, because there's so much attention to the machine, and then to family, and strategy and logistics, which my wife did a lot of that, and she's brilliant at that stuff. And the other element of it, because it was COVID, we spaced the shows out. So I didn't want to, like, we happened to like carry something into somebody else's house, you know what I mean? I didn't want to be like show. So we were doing like one show a week.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, we were doing like one show a week so we could space it out. That is really hard, like as a touring artist, because then all of a sudden you can't really get into a show rhythm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it is like doing show, like night after night, or even two a night, or whatever it takes to like get up to that frequency. And then once you're there, you just ride that frequency out as hard as you can. So it wasn't until the second year where I was like, I can't play one show a week. And COVID had kind of subsided a little bit, or the fear had subsided, or whatever the things were, where I was like, okay, people are okay if I did a show last night, where before it was like, I was trying to be as sensitive as possible. But I was like, I got to do at least 4 shows in a row. I can't do one a week, 4 shows in that month. I'll do 4 shows in a weekend, and then no other shows that month, so we can do family stuff and whatever.
Yeah.
But I was like, I got to crush. I got to do. And the best case scenario is just like I got to play for 2 weeks, because it's like I ramp up into that rhythm, and then I can all of a sudden then you start creating something as a performer. That's the other thing too. It's like there's creation in performance, and that's something I've learned a lot with just like hanging with hoodoo guys. Like the creative moments are happening on the stage. It's not like you do a bunch of creative stuff and you perform the stuff you created.
Right.
It's like, no, you also are creating something on stage. And
yeah, you're leaving the door open for.
Yeah, and it's not like I'm not improvising or anything like that on stage in my shows.
Yeah.
But there is something that is created in a vibe or a frequency or a moment or a audience exchange or just in your presence or whatever it is that you can't really get to if you're doing a show and then all of a sudden family, and then a show, family.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that was a really hard part about the last 2 years of touring.
Yeah. So when you were in those, even in the 4 days on and the other 3 kind of recuperating, getting ready for the next stint, like, are you constantly thinking about a system that gets you, are you trying to, like, I don't want to say perfect, but change and make it more efficient as far as like your headspace and like basically your headspace between those 3 things of like show, creative Jared, and then the family, dad, RV, logistics.
Yeah.
And are there times like you're like, yeah, I want to at least put this amount of time in?
Oh yeah. I mean,
or is it kind of, are you kind of freestyling? Because I know it's times I could get to where I just over and over, I'd end up just feel like I'm always failing all the time.
Yeah, that is really how it feels. That is honestly how it feels.
Okay.
Because then you're not doing any of those things well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because that thinking you're failing is a part of that 100%.
Yeah.
And you got 10% over there just blah, blah at yourself.
That is a very good way to describe it, for sure.
Yeah.
And honestly, it probably happens now more with my days being home now that we've been home for a couple months. Like, because I say to my wife all the time, I was like, look, I need like 8 hours, 9 or 10 hours straight. Like, I can't do this thing where I like go into the studio for 2 hours and then come out and try to make you lunch and then like, go back and spend a couple hours and go pick up the kids. And, there's no way. There's no way that you can't get up to that frequency. Mm-hmm. You can't get that energy or ramp up into that space because then once you're in that frequency, stuff is super efficient.
Yeah.
Like everything pops and you're hitting it. But you know what I mean? It takes a long time to get there. And then once you're there, it's like you don't leave that space. Like don't leave that frequency. Something breaks you out, you got to do all that again. You got to ramp up into that headspace. Mm-hmm. And that's what I was trying to say about touring. It's the same way. It's like whatever it is that creative thing that is happening on stage, getting to that frequency, it takes show. Mm-hmm. And it just doesn't happen if you're, taking little bits at a time. But it's hard to say that. It's hard to look at your family and say, leave me alone for 9 hours.
Yeah.
Because it feels like you're neglecting, which you are. I mean, you're just neglecting something that, like, take all this on. But if I in that 3 hours to ramp up to that frequency, and then those 6 hours that are like crazy good work, and I get to the end of that thing, it's like, freaking, yeah, I'm done. And I could be done for 2 days.
And it fills you, like, I don't know if you feel this
100%.
way, it fills you out in a certain way to
100%.
where then you're actually really good at that other thing.
You're not walking into the other space all mad and
you're not pulling that not enoughness around and it coming out all.
That is exactly right.
Sideways,
Yeah.
basically.
That's 100%.
And I know I can resonate with that because there's been times I get that after you write a song or something, it's like it fills you, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
but it fills you up a certain amount of contentment.
The way that I've expressed it to my wife is I'm like, my job is project based. It's not time based. Like I can't tell you when it's going to be done. When it's done, it'll be completely done. Like I can't be like, oh, it's 2 more hours and then it's not. Like it's however long it takes because it's based on the projects. It's not based on what I can get done in an amount of time. So it's like when it's done, then it's completely done and I'm 100% where you need me to be. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know when that done is. That's a hard thing to promise a partner. That's a hard.
There's nothing.
That's a big ask.
Yeah. There's nothing concrete there. It kind of is like the opposite of when you were explaining her personality of being very like.
Because it's not the way that the rest of the world works.
Yeah.
The rest of the world works on schedules and times and things like that. But the life that I like, or the life that I chose at least, seems very project based.
For sure. It's probably like just a journey of constantly trying to get better while I don't even know if better is the word, but more in tune with it, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, how fast can you get to that frequency?
Or for one, do you ever feel like so crappy, like not out, like you're not even a musician, like you don't feel like writing, you don't feel like playing, you don't feel like singing or chasing whatever it is?
Yeah.
And are you saying that during those times you force yourself to put yourself maybe at the studio or somewhere for your probability of getting to that frequency can 100%. Happen? I mean, has there been times where you're just like,
there have been times
I just hate it all, and
there have been times when I've gone to the studio for 6 hours and nothing happens. Like not even a little bit of something. Not even like I'm working on something and
didn't even hang any stars.
Like literally.
Yeah.
And I almost hate admitting this. Like and I don't know how to get through those times without doing that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I trust that there's
without doing what?
Without like going and doing nothing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like I trust that there is
somehow part of the journey or process.
Yeah, there's like an egg hatching on the other side of it. I trust that that's happening, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I'm not kidding, just sit for 6 hours and it's awful. It's just an awful feeling.
I mean, I'm really grateful that you will bring this up, because this is like, I think this is things that we're all on our own journey trying to do the good things.
Yeah.
And you're only hearing and seeing about the good things people are doing. Right. And like that stuff is that's so painful. Like we all go through that completely, like, I don't know, like searching for that meaning and purpose. And there, in my opinion, or at least in my experience so far, it really seems like that's a part of life that happens at times. So where it convinces you, it's so convincing that like, for one, you're down, and then it might get worse. And then it's really convincing, like you might not ever come out of this one.
Yeah.
And although you can look back on your life and every time you pop out, and a lot of times you'll pop out with something like you're saying with something hatched inside, something moved inside. You grew in some way, whether you can explain it or not. But that convincing moment is like, it really, I think it takes all people down a certain amount, and people that are creative and have these heightened highs and heightened lows. You could possibly get stuck there. Mm-hmm. Like some people, that's why I think of some of the most famous people or whatever that, the people that we've lost and people passed away getting hooked on drugs and stuff. And I have my own story of like dependency on drugs or alcohol or whatever it is. And have you ever experienced any stuff like that where you'll find other stuff that numbs you out of it, or do you keep yourself in check, or like what is that?
Yeah, my numb. I've never drank. I never did any drugs. I never even smoked a cigarette. I'm not Mormon or anything, but I never found my way to that stuff. I even creatively, like trying to get your brain into like a weird space. I've always used sleep deprivation. Well, one, because I'm a little bit of an insomniac anyway. But I try to like go for that 4 a.m. miracle where you just like, your brain is so mushy, all of a sudden stuff comes out of you that you didn't know. You know what I mean? It's like
you strategically use that, or you?
Because I don't do anything else. Like it is my drug
Yeah.
of choice, is to just, I'll be up for 2 days just so my brain can get into that float space where it starts thinking of stuff that I wouldn't have thought of.
What is that though? Because that is some sort of
I gotta assume
thing that you're like some kind of self punishment or something. Yeah, I guess that's what I was after. Of like, when you're low, what do you do? Because sitting in it's really, really hard for most people. I'm getting more and more working. It's like a muscle that you work.
Yeah.
Of how to sit through the crap.
Through the down, yeah.
Yeah, and just sit and like a lot of time, because it's so convincing. It's just like, man, I'll drink some coffee to take myself with just a little like my that just might be my brain.
I don't even drink coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
or is that part of like you growing up or something? Like when things get hard, who taught you or gave you an example of what to do when things get hard?
Okay. That's a good question. All of a sudden I feel like I'm in a therapy session.
My bad.
And I've never been to therapy. But I would say a characteristic of my family is pretty dismissive of lows. Like, maybe to an unhealthy degree, and it's not like, I don't know how to say it, but like in a dumb like kid show camp kind of way, like put on a smile, freaking whatever that would be. But that's kind of how my family was. It's like my family was in a lot of leadership positions. My family was on stage a lot. There was a lot of like, but it was genuine. It wasn't like nobody was putting on a show, really. Somehow the smile or the joy, whatever that thing is that's inside, there's a way to find it. And I don't know if I'm genetically, it's part of my genetics to know how to find it, or if it's a part of like whatever family indoctrination of where you find it. And I'm not saying I haven't had a hard life, and I'm not saying I haven't had an easy life, but it doesn't seem, the lows that I experience don't seem as low as what I have heard or what it feels like other people have talked about. I'm not saying I don't have lows. I definitely have them, but it feels like I know how to get out of the lows without well, here's the other thing too. My grandfather's father was a very abusive alcoholic, to the point where my grandfather had to live with his grandmother and aunt and grandfather. So his kind of, what he dictated for his family was pretty clean living, for the idea that I believe that he, as a person, because of who his father was, has an addictive tendency. And that gene or whatever could also exist in myself. So to the point where I'm like, well, if that's the case, then I'm not going to touch the stuff.
Yeah.
Like, because I can see myself like going,
Yeah.
not just a little bit, like going all the way.
Yeah, you can get really just like the music. It can be, I think of that energy as we call it like the addictive whatever, but maybe it's a positive thing. It just or maybe it's not either one. It's unbiased. It just is like
It just is what
wherever
it is,
it's
yeah.
like I think about when things snowball in itself, like it doesn't pick a direction. It's just like more whatever you feed it, the
Right.
more it
Yeah.
does, you know. But that's interesting though, that dynamic with your great grandfather.
Yeah, my great grandfather. Yeah.
Okay, so that dynamic of whatever pain was associated with that type of addiction stuff,
Yeah.
that it kind of next generation is like it's kind of a typical thing. Like either next generation is a lot like that,
Right.
exactly, or it's completely like nope,
Right.
doing the opposite.
Yeah.
And you're
And my
in-
grandfather kind of grew up at like all of the generation of his age. This record of this guy talking, and I cannot think of what it is, but it was this super high positivity, how to kind of will yourself into the life that you want. And I cannot think of what that is. It was very popular in its era, and my grandfather was way into it.
yeah,
Like the way that he spoke and the way that he addressed his life was like, I determine who I am. I'm going to will myself into the person that I want to be. I'm going to dictate for my life and for my family's life a new way, he made a hard
yeah,
turn, and not in in a way that was not like, seemingly, obviously I was a little kid when he was, in his older age, but it seemed like he was able to do it with love and not like a heavy hand.
right,
To like dictate who his family was going to be and make a really hard line in the sand about, hey, this is who we are and this is who we're going to be. And somehow his kids didn't rebel against that. Like somehow his kids, my mom and her siblings, were like, yeah, this is who we are and this is who we're going to be.
Yeah.
Now, I think maybe a big part of that was singing together and kind of being that kind of family, traveling family, singing. But again, like I say, it wasn't a show. It wasn't like it wasn't a face that they put on. It really was who they were. Mm-hmm. Like there's something inside of who they were that seems to be inside of me.
yeah,
And even my generation of that, that extension of that family that is determined to draw the same hard lines in the sand and be who, be who we say we want to be. And
yeah. Well, that's pretty cool.
I don't know if I do it well all the time, but
Yeah.
but yeah.
Well, that trickled down to you for sure. Because what I'm hearing is that you do have lows, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but like maybe you just don't either genetically or how you've been shown or grew up is like it doesn't take over you completely.
Yeah.
It's very, very hard, but at the same time, knowing, like you said, keeping that knowing somehow that something's hatching on the other side, and you get up and you pick yourself up by the bootstraps type of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's why I think the decision for clean living is a piece of that puzzle, because it's like, I don't know how I would be able to do that if I wasn't like stone cold sober, which is a hard way to live, because it's, again, I don't have anything to compare it to, but what I assume through my friends' experiences and things like that, it's like, it would be way easier to numb this. Like it would be way easier. Mm-hmm. And I would feel better. But I've had so much practice of living in a thing that I can't numb, that when that thing comes around, as often as it comes, I have to live in it and I have to deal with it. And I know that I can deal with it.
I'm super grateful for your openness, and I hope that it wasn't a therapy thing. It's just because I'm like, I respect what you're doing, and I always see you working. Like it shows. You know what I mean? Like you're working. I'm just like, I just want to know, see what I can learn from you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I have song to play that actually hits on all the stuff that we've been talking about. If I could,
It would be awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
just to reflect on some of the stuff we talked about. You mentioned where you look back at this stuff, you're like, oh, if I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have been here, and I couldn't have. I mean, this song has one of those moments. I took this gig in Michigan that I knew just wouldn't make any money, and my wife was like, why are you driving all the way up there to do this thing? I was like, well, I don't know. There's something there. I can feel like I have to do this thing, and at that show, I ended up talking to the headliner who invited me on the show, and we had this great conversation in the green room, and he reminded me of this parable that I learned a long time ago, which is, it explains why family businesses often don't last beyond the third generation. And the parable is, a man plants a seed, and he teaches his son how to water it and, grow the thing. And then the grandson just sits in the shade of that tree. You know what I mean? So it's this you don't appreciate what you have, and there's the entitlement, in there. So my grandfather passed away in 2004, and then in 2020, my grandmother finally passed away. And at that time, then we sold their house. And when my grandfather passed away, it was sad, but it wasn't like heavy. When my grandmother passed away, it was sad, but it wasn't heavy. And I feel like something about them and their life, I think, existed in the house where they were, the memories and the sentiment and all those things. Because when we sold the house, that's when I lost it. I just fell apart. It's like pieces of them kind of still existed or were kind of still alive. And then we sold the house, and like everything was gone. Yeah. And I, for the first time in my life, I feel like I went through what people describe as grief that I just have never done before. And it was really heavy. And after going through this grief for this moment, I woke up, it was 4 a.m. I'm not joking. I just wrote all these lyrics out. And it's not a pop song. It's really a poem, set to music. And it tells both of those stories, I think. Dealing with that grief, and then also kind of dealing with a little bit of my own entitlement, and dealing with it being a third generation of this person that really made a hard line in the sand about who his family was going to be, and I grew up in that environment, and it feels like what he started now is gone.
Yeah.
And anyway, this is the song. It's called Shade Tree.
Awesome.
My shade tree is gone, the one that my grandfather planted. It stood on the bank of the Afton there slanted, perfect for me to find solace, a tree with the promise of shelter from what's demanded when I feel stranded. My shade tree is gone, the one that my father had watered. I watched as he turned as if burdened or bothered. Walked to the bank with a measure, a thankless endeavor to make sure the tree's deep roots continue to make his fruit. My shade tree's gone. shade tree is gone. The one that this sun took for granted. I watch someone rush in and take it red-handed. The creek has run dry and the memories that I kept and carried inside never were enchanted. Did I abandon it all? I wish you were here. I wish we could talk. What would I say? What would I say? Your son drinks too much, and your daughter's skin is all gray. Some days I don't leave the couch. We all deal with it in our own way. I miss your smile. I miss the way that you would speak, like you were talking just to me, just me. My shade tree is gone. My shade tree is gone. Maybe it's time for me to go plant a tree.
Yes, brother. Yes, brother. That was beautiful.
Thanks, man.
Man, I hear you. I hear you. That shade tree. You don't get to just chill.
Yeah.
You don't get to chill. One of the things me and Tiffany, my wife, hold together, and she comes on the podcast ever so often, to remember when we get in these lows of like, why are we doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Of like, we're planting seeds, and you're planting seeds whether you're conscious of it or not.
Right.
It's just like,
Right.
what are you planting?
Right.
It's happening all
Yeah.
the time. And then another step forward is like, and who's planting the seeds in you?
Mm-hmm.
And what seeds are you letting grow in you?
Mm-hmm.
And you to tell that story about your grandparents and those seeds, and at the same time, just it's time to,
Yeah.
you can't pivot off the shade either.
Yeah, it was.
You gotta do your own work.
It's nice to have that. It's nice to have a shade tree. It's nice to have those places where you felt safe and feel comfortable. But at the same time, it's like maybe that doesn't last your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And it doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't. That's awesome. So you just wrote that one.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we're right here in the in this moment of
Mm-hmm.
whatever, because we didn't have a plan.
Yeah.
And we really don't know each other in conversation wise that well.
Right.
And for it to just kind of lead beautifully into that song. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
Jared Mahone,
Yeah.
got them airy soul vocals. Yeah, man. I appreciate the conversation and your honesty and openness and
Thanks, man.
willingness to come on, and we'll get this thing out there.
Cool.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate it.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening. We have a request for you. Please make sure to follow us and leave a review on whatever platform you are listening on. If you want to send us a message, our email is hello@empathyjampodcast.com, and also find us on social media at Empathy Jam Podcast.
Empathy is my jam, 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 jam.